Toastmaster Shonan, the tale of Tudor.
Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests.
Good evening.
I'm sure the word together has rung a bell in your heads and in your hearts many a time. Let me take this opportunity once more today then to bring the word together alive for each one of you with a lovely folk tale set in India. Thankfully it is, because it talks about green cover and birds. The entire story revolves around, very interestingly, a flock of doves and their king, who teaches us not once but twice the lesson of the power in together. Set in the surroundings of this beautiful village, about 100 miles away into the central India, the flock of birds and their king were driven away by an evil landlord who thought of them as pests, when originally doves are considered birds of love, harmony, even holy messengers. The king, however, of the doves was very well traveled and very intelligent. He got his fellow doves together and he said, "We will fly away to a beautiful land." Their destination? A city, a thriving city called Patliputra, on the banks of the river Ganga. You must remember, the Ganga brought water, pristine clear water, right from the mountains of the Himalayas. And so the birds began their tireless journey, flying these hundreds of miles. While they flew, flock and all, the queen, who was flying at the tail end, looked at them and saw the young ones starting to fall back. So she flapped her wings, swooped right across all of them up to the king, and she said, "Your Majesty, we seem to be far away now from that land of trouble and heading in good speed towards where we need to head. This forest land right beneath us seems a fairly safe haven for us to rest for a while, don't you think? Our little ones are tiring." The king acknowledged, and he sent his little chieftain to go and survey the lands. The chieftain swooped all the way down into the forest, and very suddenly, at the almost same moment, was seen running straight back to the king. So the king looked at him and said, "Is everything all right?" And he said, "Your Majesty, I've not just found a great spot for us to rest, but I've also found food enough to feed the entire flock." The king thought of that as perfect situation. But he also thought that he needed to be a little cautious. So he said, "Let me go and survey it myself." He went down into the forest, rested on those grounds, and then signaled to the rest of the flock to come down with him. Well, the little ones were the ones that enjoyed it the most, because they sat on the ground, fluttered their wings, danced around and pranced around a little bit, and then started to peck at the little grains of rice that were lying all around the ground. Little did they know that danger lurked right round that corner. These forests, you must know, were infested with hunters who rummaged through the entire flora and the fauna, and they would take these and sell them to merchants for diamonds. Now these birds continued to peck at their meal while they rested, when suddenly the entire forest seemed to come alive with a large swoosh. What seemed like dark clouds suddenly started to descend upon them. Trapped and stuck, the king realized they were now under the hunter's net. Everybody looked around, and the birds suddenly started to panic. One after the other, they started fluttering their wings. They started pecking at the nets that were round their claws. It didn't get any better. It was just making it worse, because they got more entangled as they kept doing that. The king realized this was really something he had to stop. He said, "Stop everybody, wait a moment. Let's calm down. I think we need to find a way to get rid of the situation or we are doomed." In that silence, however, they suddenly realized how close that danger was, because they could hear the footsteps of their captors heading towards them, ready to pick up their catch. The king thought hard. The king thought long. But it was very important for him now to make that decision. And he whispered something into the dove right next to him. The dove whispered the same on, and it went on and on till all the doves were extremely ready and attentive, waiting for the signal of their king. The king shouted, "Go!" And that noise surprised the hunters, because what happened next caused them to run towards that spot, wondering what the commotion was about. They stood there shocked, because what they saw with their own very eyes was a flock of birds that picked the net up in their beaks, raised their wings, and fluttered together. This was the first time in their lives the hunters saw their captors' birds flying not just away, escaping, but with their net. The king had shown how just working together could make a difference once. They continued to fly with this heavy net all over them. And then the chieftain looked towards the king and said, "Your Majesty, this net is very heavy, and I don't think we'll be able to make it any further. Our captors are far behind." The king said, "Yes, let's fly to this little hillock close by. I have a friend who lives there." The flock of birds flapped their wings tirelessly and at last, a little bit of energy that they had, and landed on this beautiful hillock. The king started making sounds. And suddenly, the little bushes started to ruffle. And plonk, out of there jumped a little mouse, a friend of the king. The mouse heard the entire story about what had happened and how they had managed to escape with the net. Within minutes, he had started working on the net. He was gnawing away at the net that surrounded their claws. And soon, the birds were freed of that bond. They were ready to continue on their journey, and they thanked the mouse for this fantastic work that they had done, that he had done for them. The king had shown how working together for a second time, you could fear nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the tale of Together. And with that, don't you think it's very important for us to just remember some very, very simple facts? Coming together is a beginning. Staying together is progress. But working together spells true success. Those ones.